Attention, everybody. The views expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. So without any further ado, here is Marty Hamilton with Basics of Faith.
Yeah, I'm Marty. This is Basics of Faith. And today, let's continue in the book of Exodus. And I'm going to start in about Exodus 16. And we've got a continuing problem in this that happens in the wilderness of sin. And the Israelites are continuing to complain to Moses and God. And if you remember, God gave them manna from heaven. And manna means, what is it? And on the sixth day, it's called the preparation day, and they would be given twice as much that day as they were on the Sabbath, because on the Sabbath they weren't given any manna or quail. And I know whenever we were over in Israel, we got there on the Sabbath. It was like 2:30 in the morning on Saturday. And that day, we went to the restaurant there in the hotel, and all they've got is cold food, like salads or, bread or cheese, things like that. I mean, they prepared everything the day before. I guess that's why they call it preparation day, because they didn't make any food on the Sabbath day. And which I thought was interesting, and especially, I mean, these hotels, restaurants are kind of expensive, and they just kind of give you like a deli stuff. Anyway, the sixth day is preparation day, and they'd be given twice as much on that Friday, or actually the early Friday. They'd be given twice as much because they weren't given any on Saturday. And so what did they do? They went out on the Sabbath to receive their manna or their quail, and they were supposed to have picked it up twice as much the day before, and they didn't do that. And so this kind of irritated Moses, and God said to Moses, he says, "How long do you refuse to obey my laws and commandments?" I mean, he said what he said, and he meant it. And just so you get an idea, God allowed one omer per person, and an omer is around 2 quarts, and then an ephah is 10 times that. Also, they took a omer of the manna and put it in the testimony for the generations to come. So it's actually put in the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, just as a reminder of what God did for the Israelites. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, we went on to Jethro. If you remember, Jethro was Moses' father-in-law, and he married Zipporah, Zipporah, and that was Moses' wife, and she had 2 sons, Gershom and Eleazar. And Jethro went to Moses at the mountain of God, which is also called Mount Orb. And Jethro took this opportunity to make sacrifices and burnt offerings to God, which is kind of unusual because that wasn't really his custom from where he was at. Aaron and the elders joined in also. Jethro counseled Moses to teach the Israelites the statutes and the laws. And so he was saying, you're going to burn yourself out. You're just taking on way too much. So these minor judgments that you have to make, you need to get a hold of the elders, and they need to take care of that and save you for the big stuff. Kind of like in the United States, you got the Supreme Court that settles large, complicated issues. And so Jethro left and went back to his own land. And then Exodus 19, God commanded Moses to have the Israelites to wash and sanctify themselves, because God would show himself in smoke and fire on the 3rd day. God warned them not to touch Mount Sinai because they would be put to death if they did touch it. And God called Moses to the top of Mount Sinai and told him to bring Aaron back with him. This is when God told Moses everything that he needed to know. I find it amazing. You know, we talked about the 613 laws and regulations and things, and for God to, you know, just tell him that once, you know, that's kind of amazing to have all that down. I mean, talk about a photographic mind. Pretty amazing, I think. And so God spoke to that he brought them out of bondage from Egypt and listed the 10 commandments. Okay? These weren't suggestions. These are laws and commandments that God wrote himself on the tablets with the finger of God. And the first one is, you shall have no other gods before me. Second is, you shall not have graven images of me. You shall not take the name of your Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. And this is your first promise made, that if you do, your days may be long. Okay? And you shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. God also said, an altar may be made of stone that has not had tools used to shape it. So, you know, there at one time, Pharaoh was making them make bricks. You know, that was man-made stuff. God said, if you make an altar to me, we just want regular stones, and you stack them up. We don't want tools to be used on them. And also, there weren't supposed to be steps leading to the altar, which I find interesting. Moses persuaded God not to destroy the Israelites when they took their earrings to Aaron, and he made a golden calf for the Israelites to worship, sacrifice to, and hold a feast for. If you can imagine how many earrings that would take to melt that down and to make a golden calf out of it. I mean, there's a lot of people, but remember whenever they left Egypt, God said to plunder the Egyptians. And so they took all their gold and all their silver and things. And so if that gives you an idea of how much gold there was, I find that amazing. Let's go. Moses broke the tablets because he got, you know, all rot whenever he came down the mountain and saw that they were doing. I mean, he hadn't left them that many days, and they couldn't even. Israelites are probably human like we are, you know. We're told things and stuff, and we just don't get it, and we do our own devices, you know. Moses broke the tablets that God had written with his commandments when he saw the actions of the Israelites. Moses burnt the golden. I found this really interesting. Listen to this. Moses burnt the golden calf and made it into a powdered mix with water and made the Israelites drink it. I don't know. Well, that's what's that. Let me look it up. Yeah. Yeah, I can't either, but let's look it up. 32, about 29, something like that. Okay, let's start 19. So it was as soon as he came near the camp that he saw the calf and the dancing. So Moses' anger became hot, and he cast the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain, which we said that. Then he took the calf which they had made, burned it in fire, and ground it to powder, and he scattered it on the water and made the children of Israel drink it. Pretty intense. Yeah. On top of that, Moses had the Levites. Okay, the Levites were the chosen tribe to become the people that took care of the temple, and they weren't given land. I mean, They were the priest of the Israelites. So Moses had the Levites slay by the sword about 3,000 Israelites that day. And Moses instructed the rest to consecrate themselves to the Lord. So God says what he means and means what he says, you know. He says, follow my laws. Exodus 40. Moses had the tabernacle of a tent meeting to set up. He partitioned off the Ark of the Testament with a veil. The table and the lampstand should be lit. Incense shall be put on the altar of gold, along with the screen door for the tabernacle. Put the altar of burnt offering before the door of the tent of meeting. Put water in the laver next to the altar. That's for washing. Anoint the tabernacle with oil. Aaron and his sons must be washed at the door of the tabernacle. And Aaron must put on holy garments and anointed and consecrated to the Lord. His sons must be anointed and placed in tunics, and a cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The cloud of the Lord was above the tabernacle during the day, and fire was over it by night. So let's go to Numbers. This is number 12. This is interesting. Okay, Miriam was Moses' sister, and Aaron was his brother. Okay, Moses married an Ethiopian. Remember, he left him in Goshen because he had killed an Egyptian, so he's afraid for his life. So he goes off to another land, marries a woman of another land, and so his sister and his brother are giving him trouble about it. And so Moses was a very humble man, and so because he did this God angered God, and they Miriam, her hand turned to leprosy, okay? Turned all leopard. And so Moses was a very humble man, and he asked God to say, heal my sister, kind of begged him to do that. And within 7 days, he said, have her go outside of the camp, and in 7 days she'll be healed. We're going to continue in Numbers. Moses sent the leaders of each of the tribes to spy on the land of Canaan. And Caleb was from the tribe of Judah, while Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim. And the spies were to determine if the people were strong and how many there were of them, if the land was good, and if the cities were strongholds, what kind of trees there were, and if they were numerous. And so the spies went out, they picked figs and pomegranates and grapes. And whenever we went to Israel, we went up to the Sea of Galilee at Tiberias, and they have open markets. It's kind of like a farmer's market around here, and they have all their produce out there. And we bought grapes, and they were probably that big. I mean, they were humongous grapes. I've never seen, you can't get grapes like that around here. Everything they have, I mean, leeks, I don't even know what leeks are, but they're gigantuous. They say they're really good. But it was just whatever they say, it's land of milk and honey. The things that they produce over there is just different from other places. I can't explain it. But anyway, and they were really good grapes. Anyway, the spies returned to their home base after 40 days. They reported to Moses that the land was of milk and honey, and the fruits were really good, and they're probably large too. The people were strong and had some giants in the fortified cities. And if you remember, we talked about that a little bit during Genesis about how they believed that the giants came around. Caleb said that the Israelites could overtake the Canaanite inhabitants, and the news made the Israelites once again to complain. They wanted a new leader to take them back to Egypt because they didn't want to face the giants and face all the unknown. And you know, that's kind of like we are. We don't like to face the unknown sometimes. Caleb and Joshua stood before the people and told them if they would believe God, he would deliver them into the land. The people took up stones to kill Caleb and Joshua. So that shows you that a lot of times we want to get rid of our leaders. And God threatened to kill all the Israelites. But by encouragement from Moses, God decided that only Caleb and Joshua would see the promised land. Remember, we talked about the generation, the second generation was the one that was able to go into the promised land. The first generation wasn't allowed. But he made an exception for Caleb and Joshua. Plague killed the 10 spies that brought back the bad report to the Israelites. And even though God informed the Israelites that they would not see the promised land, they went up anyway. Israelites are hard-headed, I guess. They went up anyway, and the Amalekites and the Canaanites attacked them and drove them all back. You know, God said, not to do it. They did it anyway. Continuing in Numbers, once again, the Israelites became discouraged and complained against God. This is just a theme we keep repeating, is they were always complaining. This time, God sent fiery serpents to bite them, and many of them died. Moses made a bronze serpent and placed it on a pole so if the people that they were bit looked at it, they might live. And remember, we discussed the medical caduceus. It's like a rod with bronze serpents around it. I don't know if they do it anymore, but that used to be outside a medical clinic a lot. Anyway, it's called a caduceus, and that's where they believe that came from, is this staff that Moses had with the serpents on it. Let's talk about Balak. He was the king of Moab, and he asked Balaam to curse the Israelites. The angel of the Lord blocked Balaam's donkey and caused Balaam to strike the donkey. PETA people ought to be getting on him. The donkey spoke to Balaam, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him. Balaam continued on, but was only allowed to speak what he was told. So this Balak guy asked Balaam to curse the Israelites, and God made a scene he made a donkey talk to him and said, that's not going to happen. You're going to bless the Israelites instead. And that's what happened. We can go to Deuteronomy now. Moses led the Israelites for 40 years. He describes all the things that they have been through with each other. He says, we brought you out of Egypt, and, we did all these things. God did all these things for you. And Moses also described the blessings and the cursings, and that's in Deuteronomy 30 and 29. If you get a chance, you need to just go through that, where you're blessed in the city and blessed in the country and all that, but you're also cursed in the city and cursed in the country. So that's really good scripture to read, I believe. And he asks that, that you choose blessing, because if you choose blessing, you're choosing life. Okay, real simple. So at 120 years old, Moses passes away, and Joshua is made leader of the Israelites. Moses assures them that God will not leave them and not to be fearful. I'm sure after seeing what the Israelites did to Moses, they were always complaining at him, and then Caleb and Joshua, they were going to stone him. I'm sure Joshua probably did not really want to take on this job, but he did. And the Israelites ought to be thankful that he did. Moses went to Mount Nebo on top of Pisgah, and the Lord showed him the promised land. So he got to go up to the top of the mountain and look over, and God showed him everything that the Israelites were going to inherit. And but he didn't get to go across. He died there in the land of Moab, and no one knows where he's buried. And I think you see that even in the book of Jude. Kind of interesting. I don't know what to think about that, but you might look at that sometime. It's kind of interesting. Moses was 120 years old, and before he died, he laid hands on Joshua and made him a leader of the Israelites before he died. And like I say, Joshua might have not really wanted to do it, but he did it anyway. God told Joshua to be brave and to meditate on the book of the law and day and night. In 3 days, the Israelites were to cross over the Jordan River and to possess the land. Rahab. Rahab's an interesting character. She feared God and hid the 2 spies that's sent out by Joshua to Jericho. If you're looking at Jerusalem and you go to the north, be the northeast a little bit, there's the land of Jericho. Whenever we're over in Israel, it's all behind a wall now. And I guess you can get in there. I don't know. I didn't even try. But anyway. She lowered him down, and because she helped the spies, they asked her to tie a scarlet cord on the windows so that no harm would come to her or her family. They stayed in the mountains 3 days before reporting back to Joshua that the Lord would deliver Jericho to the Israelites. So the Levites carried the Ark of the Covenant and into the river Jordan, causing it to become dry land for the Israelites to cross over. You know, we don't know where the Ark of the Covenant is to this day. Everybody's got ideas, but they really don't know where it's at. And I find that interesting, that they just kind of lost it. Joshua removed his shoes because the commander of the Lord's army said to him that Joshua was on holy ground. Remember, Moses went through this where Moses was on holy ground and he had to remove his sandals. And same thing about Joshua. There seems to be a repeating theme in the Bible, if you ever notice while you get to reading it, that sometimes what happens to one person, it's repeated with another person. I find that pretty cool, actually. For 6 days, the Israelites marched around the walls of Jericho once per day. On the 7th day, 7th is perfection with God, and on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times, blew the ram's horn, and shouted. The walls came down, and everything and everybody were destroyed except for Rahab and her family. Remember the scarlet cord? Because she helped the Israelite spies. Achan took a Babylonian garment and 200 shekels of silver and 50 shekels of gold from the Jericho attack. And they were told not to take this money. It was to be put into the treasury. Instead of putting it into the house of the Lord's treasury, the Israelites stoned Achan and his family. They burned them and all of their belongings. And Joshua was not aware of Achan's sin. The spies told him that the people of Ai were few, so he only sent about 3,000 men to take Ai. They were defeated because of Achan being accursed. Okay? So, because of his sin, and then these people taking off on their own, going against what God said, they decided to do it for themselves, and so they were driven back. The Israelites defeated Ai afterwards. This is in Joshua 10. And God sent hailstones and made the sun stand still for a day to defeat the Amorites. More of them died by the hailstones than by the children of Israel. And I do appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to chat with you about scriptures and Bible. And I pray you have a blessed week. And it is my hope that this enhances your study of the Bible. And we got a new year, 2020, coming up. And I pray that it's blessed for you. And y'all have a happy one. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.